deeply resonate with the archetypes that you mentioned and the lover and the dreamer. And I do know that you have another podcast coming up with Leading with the Heart. So I would like to open up that space a little more. For many executives I talk to, is like when I talk to, there's more than these 10% of your consciousness. You can see in their face, what do you mean? Yeah, there's 90% more to tap into. So the 90% is certainly our big heart. And interestingly enough, many leaders I talk to, I realize they have a big heart.
They do.
Big heart. And maybe it's a fence around it, but it's not that they don't have it. It's just an exploration of how much more intelligence, capacity, connecting, how can we describe best this phenomenal capacity to our audience? Say, listen, wow, when you ask men about feelings, they say, yeah, I'm hungry or thirsty. But no, there's everything already here. It's just a matter of exploration. So how could we describe that huge capacity that can handle all what we said before?
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful question. Let me say a little bit about organizational psychology and then answer your question about the giant heart. Um, Most organizational cultures are built on an industrial psychological model in which the workforce is thought of in largely technical terms, or at best, sort of as knowledge workers. We created organizational cultures that devalued the body. They asked people to work past natural limits and natural rhythms of what a body can sustain. They devalued relationship and interdependence and put a very high premium on individual success and ambition and what is called resilience, which basically means not having relational needs. And they completely excluded the notion of spirit. So when you're being asked to show up and simply contribute your mental activity, you have to be proactively numbing your emotions, because otherwise they walk in the door with you. They're hardwired into our experience of daily life. So one of the things I ask leaders to do in my programs is to make a rigorous and brutal inventory of all the small and large ways that they're numbing themselves in order to not feel themselves all day long. And you get an extraordinary list of daily and weekly behaviors that run from what seem like benign activities like reading the news or overcommitting or exhausting oneself or isolating to things that are much more overtly problematic, like addictions. And when you ask them, what's the cost of that numbing? Why would we talk about that in a leadership program? People very immediately understand they're hacking off their felt experience, their passion, their love, their intimacy, and they're walking much too alone in their role as leaders. And when you let the poignancy of that loneliness just sit as a felt sense in the room, everybody hungers for something else. You don't have to teach people to care. You don't have to teach people to want to tend to one another, to want to experience themselves as generously interwoven in a community. That's human nature. You just have to highlight the cost of the current contract. And then people's immediate impulse is towards relatedness, is towards community, is towards entwining. I then do a next exercise, which I think is really important, because we have been taught to not need each other and to rely on ourselves to a disproportionate and unnatural degree. We also don't have a natural relational vocabulary. When I ask even very senior leaders, very successful people, how could somebody support you emotionally? Universally, groups can come up with two things. They could listen to me or they could hold me. Well, the truth is, there are hundreds of ways somebody could emotionally support you. But if you don't have a vocabulary and you haven't built a kind of inner circle of intimacy, you neither know what to ask for or who to ask. So part of what I believe leaders need to do now in this time of great pressure and impossibility is to start to have a language of interdependence and community, or said a different way, to welcome the quality of love and caring in the workplace. It's not at all unusual, Stefan, that I'll take a group that's been working together for a decade or longer, and on the last day they'll say to me, I've worked next to so-and-so for a long time. I had no idea they had an autistic child, or I had no idea their parent had dementia, or I had no idea that they immigrated young and that they feel bullied every time I raise my voice in a team meeting. Like, we don't know one another's interiority. And in the absence of that information, we're acting in ways that are constantly re-triggering people's early childhood hurts and causing them to be knocked off balance. So this is not only about reintegrating kindness, or what you called the big heart in the world, but it's also about helping people to stay resourced and bring their best day in and day out in the workplace. And that to me is an obvious business imperative, particularly at a time which is under so much pressure.
Absolutely. Staying resourced, that's a very powerful picture to me. And it gives the idea there is resource, there's not a scarcity. Yes. And we need to create it, but you are the source, you are the resource. Now, I think we're getting closer to that idea that being centered, being grounded will help, opening all senses, all capacities of intellectuality that we have, not kind of pressing towards life, but letting life come, and you will have senses filter it and make sense of it. But it's not going to be maybe your sense of it, which feels good or bad, but it's more what I probably call more what is true. Mm. So what is your wisdom about this centeredness, about this groundedness, about exploring who am I, about this big resource? So not taking the idea I have to learn something and add on, but I don't believe you have to learn something except to know who you are. So what is your perspective around this notion of centeredness, groundedness?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say the part that I think is easy and the part that's deep. The part that's easy is making sure that you're in what my friend Tony Schwartz calls a shape of a corporate athlete. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Most leaders are absolutely exhausted. Their mental health is very compromised. They're intellectually oversaturated and they're lonely. So that's not a sustainable roadmap for success. There has to be a turning inwards to take care of your body, to create love and connection around you for emotional support, to take time for reflection and metabolizing of life experience. So there's just a simple way of thinking about what kind of shape am I in? Am I future ready, or am I really in a state of subtle collapse that I'm trying to push through? Right? That's the easy answer. The deeper answer, I think, is that we have generation on generation of untreated trauma in the cultural fabric of the world and therefore of every organization. And when leaders take the time and commit to doing a deeper healing journey for themselves, for their families, for their ancestors, for their collectives, there's a kind of freeing up of real estate. It's like you get back an enormous amount of RAM in your operating system. That's white space that can be created by fresh potential. Can be inhabited by new ideas, can be saturated by vitality and fresh capacity. So I myself believe that it is part of vertical development isn't just becoming emotionally fluent, but it's actually taking the time to do deeper restorative work that has the possibility of really integrating earlier life experience. I've one of the things we do as part of our leadership programs is a systematic inventory of the kind of adverse incidents people have experienced early in life, particularly those in the first 7 years of life that are so developmentally formative of people's beliefs and fears and interpretive systems. And fairly universally, people are either struggling with things that happened that they haven't processed, or absences of love and attunement and encouragement that should have happened for healthy self-esteem and healthy emotional resilience. And when you can stop and go back and tend to those hurts or those make up some of that attachment breach, the person is freed up at a level that is really catalytically different in terms of who they could be to lead themselves, to heal their families, and to drive excellence. So I don't think we can disconnect the inner journey of self-exploration and alchemy from the journey of outer potential and contribution. And I think organizations that are willing to support leaders to do that deeper self-reflective work, whether it's through coaching or leadership programs or retreats or some kind of a more psycho-spiritual path of development they would select, doesn't matter, same. But it does matter that you cultivate your inner life in that way.